Mother Mary's Diary, Chapter 22, Episode 1. Artemis visited the Vatican twice. Her grandfather had a simple enough plan. She hid small smoke and alarm bombs. They were set to make noise. It wasn't hard to prepare the distraction during the tour. After the tour, she mingled with groups that wandered the grounds staring up. The purchase of the equipment for which she had her fake ID and the building of the little stinkers took most of a week. She wasn't used to building small things. They were on timing devices to go off one after the other from noon till 14:30. It was a mean plan. It would cause thousands to panic. Having them spaced out over space and time reduced the risk of stampeding tourists. It would be seen as nothing more than a nuisance after the time alarms were all smashed. A little smoke and noise, probably a reaction to a proclamation. That was the plan. Keep eyes up top while Artemis came in from the bottom. She had to hide her equipment the night before so that she could slip into the river unnoticed. The key to the heist was the river. It passed under Vatican City. It wasn't on the map. It wasn't public knowledge. Grandpa had discovered it in his research. As long as there wasn't or had been too much rain, it was possible to get into the sub-basement of the country. That was a test of map reading. It was easy to get lost. If you stayed lost, you might not be found for 100 years. Where she had wanted to go was a vault that likely hadn't been visited for hundreds of years. The Vatican was a vast storehouse of a good piece of the world's real and cultural wealth, most of it forgotten. When she had gotten rid of everything, including her fake ID, she spent most of a day imagining telling her grandfather how great his plan was. He would have been very happy. A good thief leaves no trace. The only evidence that anyone was in the dungeons was the missing scroll that no one knew was there. That was now in a tube in Grandpa's library. Artemis looked up from her work when she heard a car coming up the drive. Carla used her mother's car whenever she could get it. "Hey, Artemis, what are you doing?" "Hi, Carla. I'm just translating the first bit of the Diary of Mary. The Mary that was the mother of Jesus." "Sure, what else would you be doing? That is, if you weren't hammering hot metal on an anvil or hunting birds in the woods with a stick." "It's a nice story. It's a shame they didn't put it in the Bible." "Yeah, funny that. I've got some translated. Can I read it to you?" Carla smiled and sat down beside Artemis on the swing chair. She took a look at the pile of pages that looked like copies of photos taped together. "What language is that?" "Hebrew." "You can read Hebrew?" "Hebrew is pretty straightforward." "Sure it is. I'd love to hear the story of the Mother Mary, but not in Hebrew. Are you ready?" "Jesus, Artemis, you look so stunning, like you grew up into a woman on your trip." "Thanks, Carla. Italy is a great place to see wonders of art history. Rome is so different from here. The Vatican is shocking. You can still smell the blood and smoke from the hundreds of years of murder and plunder, but it is so gloriously hidden under art of all kinds. The best sculptures of all the times. I'll tell you all about it later." Carla had her mouth open, wondering what to say. Holy cow was the only thing that came to mind. Art history, church history, and Hebrew. Carla closed her mouth and pulled off her shoes. "I'm ready." Mary's Diary, Chapter 1. I was the youngest of 3 sisters. My 2 older sisters had been married off, and my parents, being rather poor, wanted to marry me off as fast as possible. When Joseph offered to marry me, they quickly consented. He was much older, but he came from a respectable Jewish family. He had inherited his father's carpentry business and made a very good living at it. His 2 sons, Peter and James, were close to my age. I didn't object. It would have been pointless and impolite. Joseph was a good man, well respected, well connected. So I smiled when I was bequeathed to him. We lived in hard times. Rome had no regard for our beliefs or laws. They were a ruthless lot of wasteful and indulgent brutes. Our days were spent trying to avoid them. The soldiers were entitled to whatever they wanted. They called it taxes. It was this entitlement that was to make me infamous among my people. The representative of Rome for our region was a villain that called himself King Herod. He thought most highly of himself. He kept his domain decorated with those he didn't like, nailed or tied to crosses. These crosses were fodder for scavenger birds and dogs. All my people hated him. No one dared speak against him. Sentencing people to slow and torturous death was not his only pleasure. His other pleasure was using his position of unquestionable godlike authority to take any woman he chose to take. To resist meant the cross. He devoured countless young virgin girls, like all tyrants, breaking in girls, boys too. Holy tyrants and their entitlement. Even Moses raped countless boys and girls. When I had been captured by soldiers and delivered unto the Lord, I knew what awaited me. You will bear a child, and you shall call him Jesus. How can I bear a child? I am yet a virgin. He smiled at me, thinking that my innocent pleading might influence him. Perhaps it did. He took me to his chambers and raped me twice a day for many days before he tired of me and sent me away. I was violated and shamed. I went back to my parents. They had feared for me. They rejoiced at my return, but knew I had been broken. We must keep this a secret, Mary. Tell no one. If Joseph finds that you are no longer a virgin, he will call off the marriage. The wedding night little bag of goat's blood trick was known to all Jewish mothers, and my mother explained how I would fool my husband. It wasn't right. It was a crime you couldn't even confess to a priest. The plan was good, but like so many plans, it didn't allow for the most common side effect of continual rape. I was pregnant. This was a big problem. The wedding was set. My own people, even though they knew that many young girls were taken to the Lord or even taken in the streets by foot soldiers, they mocked me. Virgin Mary with a child of the Lord. In all my shame and misery, what a blessed day it was when Joseph came to me and said that it was neither the fault of the child or of me that I was taken by the Lord. He still wanted to marry me. I clung to his legs and wept with happiness. That's all I've got so far. Carla had been staring at Artemis, watching her read, quite unaware that she was in shock. That's frightening. This Hebrew stuff says what you just read? I'm not that good at translating, but it's close. Mary didn't really write in sentences. How do you know the stuff is real? I have the original. You have the pages that the Virgin Mary wrote. It's a scroll. That's why I had to take pictures. It was too delicate to copy on a photocopier. I have one in my smart device. Oh, well, I use my smart device camera. You have a smart device? I had to phone my mother. Never mind that, Artemis. Okay. Help me. How the hell did you get into the Vatican? A sovereign country. To get something that isn't even supposed to exist. None of the writing of the Bible was from anyone in the stories. I think the early Christians were gaining so much power in the early years that the high priests and kings had a conference, can't remember what they called it. They decided what stories to put in the new holy book. They made certain it was written that the authority figures were ordained by God. That was the purpose of it. Real stories are never like that. Artemis, how the hell did you get it? Where did you get it? It was locked in the vaults of the Vatican. The Vatican is a great place to store things. They store everything in there. And it's all at perfect humidity and temperature. It really is wild in there. How? I'm having trouble believing this. My grandfather wanted to find it. He had found something in his research that suggested there really had been Jesus that went around rubbing cannabis oil on people. A medicine man. How the hell did you get it? I stole it. Oh, I think I don't know where I am again. I'll make us some tea. Carla still hadn't moved when Artemis came back with 2 cups of tea. I guess it must sound pretty crazy. Did you just realize that now, while I was making the tea? It sounds impossible. The idea of a farm girl, no offense, I know you are a mighty hunter and all, it's just not one of those things that happens. I don't know if it ever happened before, but someone knew this hidden place. Someone told someone who wrote it in a book. What book? A history book about the Vatican. Not a big seller. No pictures. You can see if you want to. It's in Grandpa's library. You still haven't been up there. Later, Artemis. I don't know where I am yet. I'll explain. I'll listen. Artemis smiled. Carla wasn't scared. She was shocked. I might not have gone if I had stopped to think about it. It was an obsession with my grandfather. He bought books at second-hand stores, some from libraries. Libraries often sell books no one reads anymore. And he had stolen a few. He enjoyed stealing books. Some he stole from libraries, some he stole from universities, some he stole from rich people's libraries. Most rich people's libraries had books that were never used, read. Things like the Odyssey and the Iliad. Many of his books had to do with the Roman Empire. He wanted to understand the transition from the empire to the church. He talked about it a lot with me. He was convinced that it was something more than opportunity. He thought the empire became the Roman Catholic Church. It sounds crazy to most people. I'm one. Institutionalized psychopathic criminals is what he said. That's crazy. From the inside? What? It is obvious when you see it. I'm not there yet, but I think I can walk. I'd like to see this library. Come, I'll show you. Artemis took Carla up to the attic, a narrow stairway, almost a ladder, to a pale green beautiful door. The door was an old wooden construction made by grandfather, a little metal latch but no lock. There were no treasures or secrets, just old books and papers. Carla inspected a few book titles while Artemis continued her wild story. This is a copy of a map of the Vatican storage vaults. It's a few hundred years old, maybe much older. Was that Hebrew? Yes, whoever made the original map, not the original drawing for the building. I don't think that there are any. This map isn't very accurate, but it shows the way, not a real labyrinth. It was a mess of hundreds of years of building. The place is crazy down there. Was it dark? Absolute. Without light, I would have seen nothing. So do you think the Jews wanted the scroll to prove the Virgin wasn't a virgin? What? Why is it in Hebrew? I don't know. The Hebrews are notorious for being places. But it could be the Jews. I don't know. But writing in Hebrew doesn't make you Jewish. Oh. Are you okay with it? Maybe I shouldn't have told you I'm a petty criminal. Breaking into the Vatican is not a petty crime. I only borrowed a scroll. You are mad. What did you do with Nellie and Beatrice? I took them to Hank. Really? Yes, really. He was happy to have the milk and eggs. You didn't take the chickens to the other farm? No. Okay, Artemis, I need a smoke. You mean marijuana? Yes. THC, set you free. I'll make another tea. They went back down to the kitchen. Carla took her time rolling a joint while Artemis made some tea. Why did your mother wait 10 years to write to you? I don't know. That's just as freaky as stealing scrolls from the Pope. It isn't his. I'm on your side. The Pope can suck it. It's just that, I don't even know.